So the important part about this video is to understand how to manage with digital media content. And that means that all media content must be assessed by looking at the properties windows. Now there's property windows in every program you will ever open. And so I just opened up this picture, which I downloaded from the internet. I have no idea what size it is, what resolution it is. I look at it, it looks okay, but in reality, it's got nothing to do with what is the actual picture. So the way to do that in Photoshop is you come up here to Image, and you go to Image Size. And Image Size tells me that this is 72 resolution. And 72 resolution is only for web. It is not for print whatsoever. You cannot print a 72 resolution. It will look really terrible. So even if I come up here to inches, you can see it's 13 inches on here. So let me go back again to image size. I'm going to untoggle this resampling off. And you see it's still the 13 by 6 inches, but it's 72. So I could not print this. Now, what you can do is, okay, we don't need 13 by 6 inches. We could go smaller on this. Say it's a magazine, right? You're working on a fashion magazine publication, and they could use it smaller. So in Photoshop, you can actually come up here and you see you must, and I say this twice, you must have the resampling toggled off. And now I'm going to try to get it to be 300 DPI without corrupting the file. And you can do that because the resampling is off, and you hit 300. And now that's as big as it can get with 300. Now that would print really well. And sometimes what you do in printing is you do a test. So the last resort is to do it for 150. And in 150, you do get it to be 6 inches. But that's an iffy situation. I would never say, I approve of a 150. I would never. I would always say, you're taking a chance. You better pay for the proof, right? To be sure. So that's important. So this is, this is going to be difficult. Now on here, this one came in big, right? Let's take a look at this one. Image size, 3,000. Much different. Still 72. In most cases, it's always 72. Even your iPhone or your Samsung or your Google Pixel, it will always come, if you always open it, it'll be 72 and you'll freak out. And you go, I thought it was a high resolution camera. It is, because look what happens. It's 72 at 41 inches. So if you wanted to get this down to a letter size, right, to be 300 DPI, which is what you want, you come up here and you go 300 with the sampling off. And you go 300, and now you have a 5 by 10 inch photo at 300. So this is very, very printable. And the pixel dimensions never change. So that's what's important about Photoshop and image manipulation. Now, the other aspect, so again here, go back to image size. You see, look how small, it's 600 pixels. It's terrible, right? So when you are finding content off of the internet, whether it be public domain, or if you're going to manipulate it enough so that it becomes clearly your very own, always look for pixels that are above 1,000 or 2,000. And when you are on Google, remember to use that tool for larger sizes. So it's important to remember that, the aspect of your position. You see how the poses on here. This is a really interesting one. They completely shot this on a green screen and placed this graphic behind them. And this is walking as well. So whatever, if you can't get a walk pose, just do a 3/4 pose where you just kind of, a little bit of a 3/4. And, another way you could do that is if you can put a little bit of a box where your feet are, you can put your foot back, or stare. A stare is very good. That'll give you your balance at least. And then this way you could put your knee up on there. That would help. So again, the important thing about image size is to look at what you have. And so a lot of times when you do work for people, especially if you do freelance work, the client knows, if it's freelance work, the client often doesn't know what they're giving you. And so you have to tell them, if they give you a picture that they want to print and it's low resolution, you have to tell them immediately in an email, not a conversation, in an email. Because what you're trying to do is document your communication, that the photographs that you have received are web resolution and not print resolution. And that the only way you can get the print resolution is if the image goes smaller. So again, as you can see here, this is inches. And this is how digital cameras can take 100 pictures on a card, because they compress it to 72 dpi. And so, but you see how big the inches are. So now, if it's for web, what you see is what you get. And but you do have to be careful, because I'm sure you have come across Instagrams that have really good resolution. That is often a pixel resolution of like 150 above a 72. And that's why it has that good quality. Okay, so that's important. So let's do this quick mess. Let's extract this background so that we can get this design, which will be yourself, to be able to composite. So number one, you always work with your layers in any program. It's either layers or tracks, as whatever it may be. And again, you see, I've opened up a file. It's always locked. Double click it. And always duplicate it. Right click. You can't do a right click in Illustrator, but in Photoshop you can. And duplicate. And then what I do with my duplicates is I highlight it, and then I put it in a folder. And so now you can put all your backups into a folder. And you do that because you could make a mistake, right? We're only human.
Sorry to interrupt. That's like a copy of what you just did.
Say that again. Right click. Duplicate.
Yeah, like, is that like a copy?
Yeah, exactly, Christine.
Oh, okay.
That's why we love it. We don't have to do copy paste. It's just a right click. Now, Illustrator doesn't do that. The duplication in Illustrator is that hamburger up here. It's like right there in Illustrator. So, but that's how you make a copy, exactly. Okay, so now, and Z key, you can mouse down to zoom out and in. So what we're going to do is what we call in, I need my toolbar. I don't have my toolbar. Let's get my tools. It says my tools are here. I do not see my toolbar. Let's see here. Oh, maybe it's over my layers. Oh, there it is. Got it. Okay. So right here on the toolbar is what we call, if you roll over it, it's called a quick mask. Now, all of these other tools in Photoshop, like lasso, polygonal, magnetic, are tools to help you to get the marching ants. So 80% of the tools that are in Photoshop are helping you to get the marching ants. And we'll do something where if you have lace and you have to extract the background from the lace, or if you have hair blowing, or any intricate detail, and you need to extract the background, I'll show you how to do that in Quick Mask. But right now, let's extract this fashion design composite so that when you do your work, you can lay yourself on any background that you want to put yourself on. So this is called a Quick Mask. So you toggle it on, and it immediately turns your layer to red, which gives you a visual cue that you're using Quick Mask. And so then the tool that you use in Quick Mask is pretty much the painting tool. So black paints the mask and white erases, so if you make a mistake. Now, there's two ways that you do with the Quick Mask. The first is to do your silhouette with a soft brush all around the edges of the figure. So what you want to come up here to your left hand up here and make it a soft brush. This is a soft brush. So that means it's not going to be hard to edge. And so you want that because you don't want to lose anything of the design. And so, but you don't want everything. So you're kind of going around the edges. Now you can zoom in. I'm going to zoom in here. So I chose that. Zoom in. And don't forget your space bar. It's the same thing as in Illustrator, the space bar. And so now I'm going to get my bracket to be bigger. Remember, do not have the caps lock on. You won't see. Watch, you see how it disappeared? I just put the caps lock on. So if the caps lock is on, you can't see the tool. And you really need to see the tool. So I'm just going to paint. As you can see, it's red. And I'm just going along the edges. But you want to do it evenly along the edges. You don't want to go more. Now, so you see, if I make a mistake, I just change it to white and I can erase it and go back and paint again. And space bar. So I'm going fast, so I'm going very sloppy. If this was a real job, I wouldn't be going sloppy. I'll deal with that later. Space bar. Up. And again, switch it up to paint. Switch it back. And so this is, and if you have a stylus, this is really great. I could pull my stylus out, and I should, but I have to readjust the monitor. This is always so much easier when you have a stylus. Okay, and we get the edges because we don't want it to be, and then of course the hair. Okay, and then I'll go back to white and just try to get some of the stuff that I don't want erased. Okay, looking good. Now we do the inside. So then you turn it to solid, because the thing about the mask is if it's airbrush, it will take 50% of the image. If it's solid, it will take 100%. So now you see, whoops, now you see I'm going a lot closer to the edge. Trying not to go too far out. So now it's going real, it's picking everything up now. Space bar. So I'm not, I'm going a little bit, not too close, not too far. I didn't get that last time. So you see the hard edge? That hard edge would be a problem because the feathering softens the edge so it doesn't look like a Photoshop composite. That's the thing about Photoshop, is to make everything look like it's the real photograph. Oops, I'm going too much outside. Stay on the inside with the solid brush. There we go. Go all the way up. And then now I can go bigger and literally just go down like this, getting everything that I want. And this is the easier tool to do because it's like drawing or painting, I should say.
How do you make it bigger?
The brackets next to P. The brackets next to P, but you can always come up here.
Okay.
You can always do the size up here. But brackets next to P is in Illustrator and in Photoshop.
So it's Shift P?
Not Shift, just P.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's not P, it's the brackets next to P. The
Okay.
Yeah, if you look down, you can see the brackets there. Okay, so I think she's good. And now you're ready to turn off the marching ants. So we click Quick Mask Off. And there are those marching ants. So you can see I messed it up right there. So I could go back. And touch it up. That's what I like about digital stuff. You never lose anything. All right, I'll turn it off again. There. Got it. Now, if I zoom out, fit all in screen, if you notice, the marching ants are on the outside at the very top and around the body. So marching ants knows that whatever you are painting, you want. And so therefore, I can just hit the delete key and it will take away the background. So now I have myself isolated. And this gives you the ability to do the next thing that I'll show you, which is using the path tool to clean up the edges. So now you see how I've isolated myself. So don't worry about your background. It's really the lighting that's on you that's going to make a difference, because you can isolate yourself with what you have. Now, so I can do Control D. So Control D gets rid of those marching ants to go to the next tool. So the next tool to clean up on this. And now let me just bring in a picture right now. Let's bring in a picture. Let's bring in woods. Okay, so I'm going to save this image. Woods. And let me call it up in Photoshop. And it may not be too big. Let's see here. Yeah, it's only 1,000. But what I can do is I'll show you. So when you have an image that is small, right, and you have to use it. We did this a little bit last week. You bring it in, and this resolution is not going to match this one. So you can Control T. Control T is your scale tool. And in Photoshop, now Crystal, this will drive you crazy because it drives me crazy. In Photoshop now, they've taken it away. You do not need your Shift key. You do not need your Shift key. And let's put it to the background, move it to the back, zoom out. And what I want really is to actually scale this. Control T. I want to scale this smaller. Oh, see, I just distorted it because I put the Shift key on there. And I'm going to duplicate it. Oops. Where's my my move tool. See, the move tool is just like the black arrow in Illustrator. And the Alt key down also duplicates. And then I want to reverse it, come up here to image. Now, to edit, transform, and flip vertically. And so what I'm going to do is kind of do a little bit of a surreal background for her. And that's a nice trick to do. If your background is low resolution, duplicate it. And you see now I have the two of these, and you can do Control T and it will scale both of them to get into here, which is what I want to do. Oh, no, did the Shift key again. Old dogs, it's hard to teach them new tricks on that. And you see, I'm going to double click this because I want more footing in her front. So this is when you change your paper. You come up here to image, canvas changes the paper. And not image size, canvas. And I want more on the bottom, so I position it to the top, and then I say height, it's 30 inches. I want 30 inches. And now you see I have it down, which is what I want it to do. And then on here again, I can duplicate this and get more of the dirt, which is what I want on here. Whoops, I didn't want to, whoops. Redo that. There we go. There we go. Nice.
Sorry, how do you duplicate on the keyboard?
On here, and it's the same thing in Illustrator, if you have a document like this, whoops, let me put that back, hold on. When you have an object like this, Crystal, right? And you want to duplicate it, it's the same thing in Illustrator. You select it and you push the Alt key down. And you see that double silhouette of the arrow?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in Illustrator. Now I can make a copy.
Oh, okay, I see.
You can make lots of copies. And that's how you make a duplication. So you can do that also in Illustrator. All right, now I can move her down. There we go. Nice. I want to save this. So always keep yourself organized by folders, folks. You really can't design things when you're not organized. So that's I mentioned that to you before. My closet is a mess, but my folders are really good. Okay, so now you notice I've got all these layers, right? And I just called this photo illustration. Now they're separate. Now, if the art director wanted to change their mind and I wanted to merge these, I should really back it up. So I would go Save As. And we've talked about this before on how you work. Just go 02. And it will save it. So now I have a backup from the first one that have them separated. But if I like what I have here, which I am pretty happy with, I can actually turn this off, turn off my copy, and I can have this image merge. Instead of having 4 layers, I can have 1 layer. So with them turned on and everything turned off that you don't want to be merged, you come up here to the hamburger, merge visible. And now I have 1 layer, which I'm happy with. And then of course you can use the crop tool to crop this and double click. There we go. Okay, so you see how now, if I wanted to clean this up, which is what I want to do, the next step is what I'm going to show you. So this is something that is commonly used with a lot of photo shoots in fashion industry. And so not only are we designing with Illustrator, creating content with Illustrator, you're also editing that content in Photoshop. So that's why it's important to know that, yes, you can sketch in bitmap programs. Like Procreate is a bitmap program. Procreate is just like Illustrator. Procreate is just like Photoshop. And so you could bring your sketches into Illustrator and trace them to be vector. You know, just the way that that Pattern Lab did from the UK. That's what they do. They sketch on paper or a tablet, and then they use that pen tool to make everything be accurate. So now here, what I want to show you is the next tool called the Path tool. So to get the marching ants back, right? I've lost my marching ants from the mask. The way to do that is to hover, to select your layer, hover over the image, and then hit Control. And you'll see the marching ants right there. When you hit Control and you're hovering over the thumbnail, and you click it, and boom, the marching ants snap to the edges of your layer.
So you just said Control.
Yep, just Control. You hold it down while you click the thumbnail. And that's how you get the marching ants back. So that's really important. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the path to clean up my edges better. So now I come over here to path. Let's bring this closer so you can see this. So in path, I come over here and I make a working path. And normally 2 is the usual. And now you see it's vector. It's points, the blue points, right? And I could go to and here, look, Crystal, here are the 2 arrows, right? Because it is a vector now. Now we're in Illustrator mine. So I'm going to click I want to move the points. I'm going to click the white arrow, deselect, come back to select it. And you notice, you see how they're solid? Before they were all selected. So I had to select off of it like that and come back. And now it's white. And I'm just going to move this out, because what you want is to be sure the distance is the same all the way around, so you don't cut off the body of the photograph. And yes, they have the handles. They have the Bezier curve there. So you want to keep the distance about the same, because what I'm going to show you is that the path is going to stroke the eraser and clear the edges up to perfection. And that is why, because it's faster to work a little sloppy and then come back and fine tune it with this, because you can grab all the mistakes that you might have made that you didn't see, which is easy to happen. And I don't want to cut her head off. Okay. So now you see the vector tool that is actually in Illustrator. And do remember this, a lot of people trace with the pen tool in Photoshop, and then what they do is this, they come up here to File, Export, Paths to Illustrator. So a lot of people utilize the quick mask, they get the marching ants where you want them to be, and then you make a path, a vector path, and then you have the ability to make silhouettes, anything. Like if you had a silhouette assignment, you literally would just get a bunch of pictures of fashion models and you would just use either the quick mask. If it's contrasty, you use another tool that we can talk about, but you use the path to make your silhouette, and you would plot, making like what I just did here. So in other words, here, this is still a little too close. Okay, so now I have it, and you want to save it. And so this will be saved with the document. It doesn't go away. Now what I want to do is really get tighter on the edge. So we go back to the painting tool. We go back to the painting tool, and up here, which is called the modes, which is also on your layers, the modes up here, you want clear, you want an eraser. And again, you don't want a hard one, you want a soft edge. And then you make your brush go small. And I had to select it, you know, sometimes it gets a little stuck. And what you're trying to do, now you see this is gonna click her, cut her hair out. So let's just fix that. Back to the white arrow, deselect, back to the point, bring that out a little bit more. Okay, back to the path, back to the brush, back to clear, be sure it's clear. And I can get the brush a little bigger, because you want it to ride down the rails, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to ride down the rails. So this is going to be a little too big here. And not big enough right there, but that's okay. Okay, here we go. You'll see it happen. I'll zoom in close so that you can see it. Okay, so now I've got everything set up. I've got the brush on, I've got clear on, I've got a soft brush, and you've got the path on, and you've got the layers on. Be sure you're on the right layer, right? And now you come down here and you roll over. Up, not giving up. There it is. It says stroke path with brush. Stroke path with brush. Now I'm going to click that. Watch what happens. You see? I'll do it again. This time I'll turn the layer off in the back. So now you see my edge, right? Go back to path and stroke it with the brush that is the eraser. And you see now, you see how much I ate into. Let me deselect. Too much right here. So again, I can go back to my points and get this to be further away. So that's why the distance has to be consistent. Back to the eraser, back to here, and no, I want normal, clear. It's a brush tool. You know, this is so funny because I remember, oh, and to deselect the path, you just select off of it. So let's select it back again. I'm gonna go back to layers. And I'm gonna, right now, it's wigging out on me. This often happens, there we go. Let me make sure I'm on, I don't have a layer selected, you see? Gotta have that layer selected. I did not have my layer selected, so therefore it wasn't giving me anything, and I had to figure it out. Now I go back to my path, and now I have it, and now I push right down here, roll over, stroke, path with brush. So what I tried to do is turn this guy off. Yeah. There, much better. And you see that, then, you know, it clears your edges up a whole lot more. And then you can deselect, and then you can just use the eraser. And then get the other ones that you have not, you know, that you can actually touch up. So you see it's a little bit still on the edges, but it's much easier to work when it's further away because you don't want to cut into the photograph. That's the last thing you want to do. And so now it's getting everything that was beyond that. There used to be, and I wish I could call up Adobe. I actually saw an Adobe building in New York City. I have to post that on my about page. That's why it's like I'm gonna have to do a Control Z, and I probably messed up things before. And I'm using a hard edge. See, I don't like the hard edge. Always be soft on edges, because if you ever zoom in to an actual photograph, it's very blurry on the edges. So that's why it's very good to be sure that you have, a soft edge. So now this way, you really can get your background to be whatever you want it to be. And as you can see here, you can still do I could still do a lot more cleanup, you see? And look at that, it really shines when you have the contrast. So again, I could go back and create another marching ants, because see, I cleaned up now. So now if I hovered over this, it would get even closer, and then I would clean it up. But there's so much irregularities around that I would really manually do this. I would just come in, get my brush. Is it soft? Yep. And just clean this up. As best as you can. And then what you do is, because of that edge, you can put yourself, you can come up here to layer style and do drop shadows. So for instance, let me come out of this. And come up here to layer style. And let me get it. Path is not on. I didn't have a layer selected. You always got to remember your selection. And so then on here, you can do a drop shadow. And let's pull this, let's zoom out of here so we can see this. So those are a lot. This is where the visual effects can come in for your video as well. Is you can actually up here on the layer style. Whoops, let me cancel that again. On the layer style, back up here, layer style, you have beveled edges, strokes, color overlays when you want to change something to a completely different color, gradient, outer glow, drop shadow, which is what I was calling up. And you can do it on, like the light is coming over there, so you can switch this around to be on this side, which is better, so the light is on her shoulder. And then you can bring the distance closer. Oh, I want to go way. Yeah, to the right, that's it. And the spread, you can bring it tighter. And that's how you can begin to animate, to make it look a little bit more real. And again, you can bring this up, double click it, and you can lower the opacity. Like, it's really strong right now, a little too strong. And I really want, let me see here. I really want it to be, it's on that side, 45. Yeah, that's better. And again, you can make it really tight, or you can make it expand, and so forth. And don't forget to save. Any questions while I'm in here in Photoshop?
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm curious, so do most people use Photoshop first before going to Illustrator, or it's the opposite?
That's a good question, Crystal. Because I have been in Adobe since the first version, and I had worked with Adobe for about 10 years before I started teaching. I would say that, and I've taught my friends who are traditional artists, fine artists, right? Illustrators, people who love to draw and paint and design. And when I know they don't like a computer, right? Like they go, "Oh, I hate this computer. I don't, it's not creative." It's like, "Oh my God," right? I start them in Photoshop, Crystal. And then they get really excited about the computer. And then I take them to Illustrator. But if you were someone who was like really like, "No, I want to learn this stuff. I know it's really cool," I start them with Illustrator. So it doesn't matter, Crystal. You see what I mean? It doesn't. The important thing is, and just to let you know, if you want to take a Photoshop class, the other class is that teaches primarily Photoshop is digital imaging. It's the class that I teach, iTech 110. So I have to talk to Karen and Juanita to, if anybody wants to learn Photoshop, that's the class that is all about Photoshop. And I think they know that, but we got to put it into the computer, the program, PeopleSoft. But yeah, so that's why, it depends on, so if people are not really happy with computers, I start with them Photoshop, because Photoshop is very, very easy compared to Illustrator. So the good news, Crystal, is you've learned the hardest program. Now you learn Photoshop, and it's the easiest.
Yeah, I think Photoshop is easier than Illustrator.
Yeah, it's more intuitive. It's more like paint.
Yeah.
Mhm. And the thing, you will come to love Illustrator because you'll be in Photoshop, and you'll like want to really get down to some design, like logo designs are in Illustrator. Anything with type is with Illustrator. Anything with illustration, people do illustrations in Illustrator, So you have to remember, people who do package designs. I had a student who, is an illustration. She went to FIT for illustration. And, she loves Procreate, right? Because Procreate is very much like Photoshop. But she loves Illustrator too, because you have a little bit more control in the design, in the drawing. So for instance, if you draw in Photoshop, you can't change the line. You have to draw it again. If you draw in Illustrator, you don't have to draw it again. You can change the line with the Bezier curve. So Photoshop is very much like traditional tools, as long as you have a stylus. But you have to remember, you can't make it go bigger unless you start big. You can't scale it up, because whatever size you drew it at is the size that it is. In Illustrator, you can make it as big as Times Square. So there are advantages in both of them, and there is disadvantages in both of them. The important thing as a creative person, to know them both. And then you make the decision where you want to be, but you have to know them both. You'll be happier, more opportunities.